Doing? Hope you're all well. So it's Richard Crawford Small with news from the front line. So in this series, which is essentially a Instagram podcast, I'm all about content repurposing. So if you're watching this live on Instagram, you're getting the visual experience, and if you're listening to this through my podcast, then you're going to get an altogether different experience. So in this series, what I'm really keen to do is actually demonstrate and show the challenges that aesthetic practitioners have from the front line, right? You know, most of the businesses in the aesthetics market are kind of owner operated. Most of them, you guys are generating enough revenue to keep you going, but you're not in that sort of big kind of elite space. That's a very narrow group of people in there. So I wanted to kind of interview some people who I've worked with and actually share the real kind of truth of what it's like running an aesthetic business. And today I'm joined with years ago at an Illumia event, and she's embraced the GSD way, the get shit done way. So today, for the next 40 minutes or so, I'm going to be talking to Tower, and here she is. How you doing?
Hi everyone.
How are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm a little bit nervous actually. This is my first ever Instagram live.
Really?
I'm popping my cherry in the orchard.
Well, it is my honour and privilege to be the first person that you're doing this with, and I pretty much guarantee after this you'll be like, "That's easy. I'm going to do these like all the time."
You might have created a monster for sure.
I really hope so, because these are quite good fun. They're quite good fun. So yeah, so basically, I kind of gave a little bit of an intro, but for me, it's been great to just tell us a little bit about your background and ultimately what it was, what led you to go down the path of starting an aesthetic business.
Okay, so I'm a nurse. I qualified as a nurse in the last century in 1994. So I've been here for a while, and I worked in the NHS as we all did. Got a little bit disillusioned with it, to cut a long story short, and felt like I just needed to move away from that public sector work, but I still wanted to stay in nursing because I loved it. So I moved into the private sector. Same problems kind of followed me. So I had an opportunity to work with what was then the National Care Standards Commission and is now CQC as an inspector. And risk management was a kind of a real bugbear of mine when working in the NHS. Safety and risk was one of the things that I really kind of focused on. So it felt like a natural fit. And I worked there for over a decade through all the iterations of the government regulator, through taking on GPs and dentists and all the different kind of challenges that all of those different sectors brought. But I started to get, again, more disillusioned with the process-driven approach of regulation. And I felt that it wasn't really about improving care delivery, but it was more about kind of box ticking and making sure that inspections got done and reports were sent out on time. So I decided to move away from there and just kind of set up my own consultancy working with those providers so I could provide that kind of close contact risk management and governance, which was great for a while, but it was incredibly stressful. And I felt that actually I wanted to come back to working with patients one-to-one, because that's what I really love. And helping people still with that kind of sense of improvement, helping to educate them about their skin. I've been on my own personal skin journey, so it felt really kind of personal to me. And I understood how transformative it could be to actually have control of what you look like. So that's why I wanted to go into aesthetics. And naively, I thought I would just jump in and it would be a fantastic business and I would just be soaring. And I very quickly found out that it wasn't like that.
Awesome. Yeah. We'll come to that because it's I think there is a reality of running your own business, and it's sort of like 5 years down the road. If someone said, if you knew it was going to be like this, would you have started? It's a tough question to answer, that one. It's a really tough one. So as you came into the sector, and it's obviously client care, helping people on their own transformative journeys is important to you. But what's your kind of philosophy and approach behind it?
I think ultimately for me, empowering people is key. And I didn't want to have the kind of business where people came in, laid on my treatment couch for half an hour, and then left without really understanding why I was doing what I was doing, or what they needed to do to be full partners and have agency in their own skin. So I wanted it from the start to be much more about education and about kind of just empowering people with knowledge about their skin. And that's kind of the approach that I've taken in all of my messaging, really. Just talking about skin, I am such a skin geek. And I just love, I can bore you to tears about how skin ages, but I love it. It's a real passion of mine. But it seems to have resonated well with the kind of people that gravitate towards me and my clinic. Yeah. So it seems to be good.
I love that saying, agency in your skin. That partnership side of things is so important, and it's I think it's something that actually gets lost a lot in the marketing for clinics. I see it's very much becomes very much about treatments and products, as opposed to that kind of collaborative approach with another human being to take them on their journey. So it's fantastic that that's your philosophy, and it's really clear in what you do. Awesome. So yeah. So what's changed then? How's the business evolved over time?
Yeah, well, this is going to sound like I'm really kissing ass, but I'm not. The biggest change has been just me kind of realizing that I couldn't grow this someone who understood business, but I didn't understand business. And the biggest change was really in my mindset around appreciating that there were people out there who understood business in a way that I definitely didn't. And they were the best people to help me grow my business. So yeah, that it sounds really basic, but just investing in business learning, investing in understanding how to grow your business, as opposed to how to, I got that I needed to understand the techniques and the treatments and the reasons why we do certain treatments. That side of it, I don't have any kind of concerns about. I know what I know what I don't know, if that makes sense. Yeah. But the business part was where I definitely needed support. And it was really only a few years ago that I switched from trying to figure it out myself and not really getting very far, to realizing that I needed someone who understood how to flip those switches in my head, so that I saw what needed to be done. Yeah,
it's definitely it's a challenge. It's a challenge, actually. From my perspective, when you're working with people who have a medical background, and the first thing is, I always love the enthusiasm you come into. I don't think you can really come into any business or this market without a blind optimism that you're going to succeed. It has to be there. Otherwise, why you won't do it? Why would you do it? And secondly, there is definitely a mindset challenge, because it can be interesting to get your perspective on this. But coming from the NHS, there's a definite, obviously, the mindset of being of altruism, of support, of helping people, pleasing people in a sense. But the flip side of that, in the business side of things, is you can't actually be much of a people pleaser, because if you do that, they take your money away from you. So,
well, there's another part to that as well, actually, which I experienced as well. You do have that kind of altruistic mindset of one, especially as a nurse. We're kind of drilled in that Florence Nightingale, you're there to care for people, blah blah blah, and you bring that with you to your business. You do have to kind of taper that a little bit to make sure that you don't get absolutely ripped off. But there's also, without wanting to, pee anyone off, there's also a slight arrogance that comes from being, well known and well respected, or at the top of your game in the NHS, and then coming into aesthetics, which is a very different ballgame. And it absolutely humbles you when you first step into it, because it is so different to working in the NHS. And even in the private sector, I mean, I've worked in private hospitals where back in the day, where we used to have to stick labels on consumables that we used on people's invoices, so that we knew that we charged them correctly. So I wasn't sort of completely blind to how business worked within health, but it still was really humbling running my own business within aesthetics and understanding that everything that happened within the business had a cost, and that cost was down to me. And even, when someone comes in and says, oh, can you give me a discount because I've been coming to you for 3 years, and you give them that discount, that's going to have a cost to you down the line. And you've got to be very hyper aware of what impact those little discounts will have in your business. So yeah, it was massively humbling coming from an area where I knew my job and I did it reasonably well to an area where I thought I knew the job, but I didn't know the business. And it took me down a peg or two for sure.
Yeah, I mean, life and business has a habit of doing that to you, regardless of wherever you are, what level you're at. But it's interesting. But I suppose the comforting side of things is that business is also process driven. From certain activities that you do will generate engagement, inquiries, which then the process kind of filters down. So it's understanding the kind of the mechanics of that. And as you said, also understanding that everything has a cost, and the cost that I see that's forgotten hugely is the cost of time. Because as an owner operator, your time is essentially the element that's got the most flexibility in it. And the questions I've asked people straight off always is like, what's your break even point? And then what's your break even point? Add your salary, because everyone forgets to pay themselves, especially and I get that in the early days. It's everything's running around this. Oh, how much are you taking from the business? Oh, I'm not taking anything yet. It's like, well, is it really a business then? It's the harsh truth. Is like, you got a hobby. It's expensive. If you're not going to pay yourself, it's a hobby. So out of everything you've been on so far, what do you say the biggest challenge that you've had, and how did you get through it?
Okay, so I think the biggest challenge for me was understanding how to make it an actual business as opposed to a really expensive hobby. Because I think I was kind of trundling along in the first couple of years, and it did take that long. I was trundling along just trying to I was focused completely, almost wholly, on mastering the skill of aesthetic treatments. And I really didn't think about, well, at some point this is going to have to pay my mortgage. And it was I almost got to the point where it was like, this has cost me so much money that I either have to make a profit or I have to quit. So that was the point where I thought I needed to cast around and, eat a lot of humble pie and ask people for help, which wasn't something that I did very well. But it was incredibly humbling. And sorry, I just have to have a little drink because I've got really right out.
I will join you. My cup of tea here.
No, see, I'm still staying on brand. I'm having my collagen supplement. So yeah, it was, that part was probably the most challenging part. When I'd been in the business for a couple of years, I had a few patients that were pretty regular, semi-regular, but I couldn't see a way forward for me to make money as a business until I started to look at the business as opposed to just focusing on the treatments. And it was with the help of business coaches. I reached out to people who specialized in sales, to people who specialized in consultation techniques, to people who kind of got me to understand the figures behind my business, because I had my head in the clouds about that for a long time. And where I thought that the business was kind of coasting along, albeit I wasn't really paying myself, I was shocked to see that there were treatments that I was doing that were not profitable. I was shocked to see how much I was giving away in freebies and discounts. That was an eye-opening, spreadsheet. So yeah, the challenge there was understanding that I needed to start making money. Otherwise, I was going to have to go back to nursing, which I really didn't want to do. And the way I met that was by asking for help, basically, because I knew I couldn't do it on my own. So yeah, that was the challenge, and that was how I addressed it.
Brilliant. It's great that you did that. I know what you mean about not asking for help. Typical bloke, didn't even ask for directions, would happily be lost for an hour walking around the street rather than actually asking for directions. God bless Google Maps. But yeah, I think also there are a lot of, I think, unique challenges that, people coming from the NHS into the aesthetics market face. And essentially, yes, you're absolutely right to focus on the quality of product, quality of service. So that kind of requires you to be a bit of a sort of, yes, a clinician, but also a bit of a, scientist in a sense, to make sure that everything that you're doing is correct. Then you need to be a skincare specialist. You need to be a specialist in techniques, and then you get asked to become a creative because you've got to create your own social media, and then you get asked to become a marketing strategist, and then you get asked to become an accountant, and then you get asked to become a business strategist. Right? It's, when you kind of lay out all of the kind of hats that you have to wear running a small business, at a certain point you have to ask for help because you can't be all of those things.
Yeah.
And one of the other elements I think that people tend to kind of forget about is objectivity. You cannot be objective about your own business. And this is where people like me kind of earn our stripes, because we can become emotionally detached
Mm.
from it. And when you see the spreadsheet there and it's like, here's the treatment that you love doing that doesn't make any money, you need the guy who has to literally just set fire to your dreams, go, it's not working. I know you've spent all that money on the training, but no one wants it.
Mm. Mm. And it is that stark, and you do have to be, you can't be
Yeah.
dispassionate about a business that you spent so much time trying to grow and build. And it does take a different perspective. It takes a different viewpoint to come in and say, why are you still doing that? It's not working. It's not making you any money. In fact, it's costing you money and time.
Mm.
So, you need to drop it. And hearing it from someone else's mouth, you can see that it makes
Yeah.
sense. But if I had been left to my own devices, yeah, I wouldn't have made the choices that I've made, that have put me where I am
Yeah.
now. I probably wouldn't have a business, to be
Right.
honest with you. so,
Well,
so yeah.
and now you have, and it's stable, it's strong, it's
Mm,
growing, and of course, at a certain point, you'll make this, not the same mistakes, but there'll be something that you need to invest in, and
mm.
sometimes things don't work. I mean, I'm quite famous for being the person who created a cryptocurrency for the aesthetics market without actually asking if anybody wanted one. No one was really that bothered, so it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, good skills. Um, so how do you how when you're talking with your clients, what's one of the kind of things that you do to build relationships? Because this is, it's a human to human game. It's
Mm.
a relationship business. So what are the things that you've learned over time that really help you build those kind of strong, and let's be honest, about commercially valuable relationships with your customers? What do you do?
Okay, well, I think one of the first things is understanding that your relationship with your patient, with your client, whatever you choose to call them, doesn't start when they walk in the door. It starts well before that. And I think you have to kind of acknowledge that you have to put in that work for them to kind of look at you and stop scrolling, and to actually pick you out of the hundreds, or, however many other clinics there are in the area. Something about you needs to stand out. And you can't wait for them to walk in before they notice that thing that makes you stand out. You
Mm.
kind of have to put that out there before they've even met you. So for me, it was kind of just showing my true self, being very transparent,
Mm.
being very much me in my messaging, whether it be video or social media posts or my website.
Mm.
I don't sort of want to have, this very glossy version of myself out there, and then when people walk in and see me, they think, really? I don't want anyone to come in and think, that's disappointing, that's not what I expected. So I feel like I'm already connecting with my patients even before I've met them,
Yeah.
because of the way that I speak, because
Mm.
of what I try and give them in terms of education and knowledge. So it's about building that relationship and building that trust before you've even met them,
Mm.
really, and laying out just setting out your stall and saying, this is who I am, this is what I'm about, this is my philosophy, my approach, my ethos, and you're welcome. So come on down and let's have a chat. So
Yeah.
it's just about your transparency and being you, really.
And was that something that you started off, or was that something you learned to do?
No, I had to learn to do that. God, my early marketing attempts were horrendous. I was very much, I didn't think that anyone wanted to see me. I didn't think that anyone wanted to hear